We see a lot of post-war settlements in the DC wasteland, but rarely do we see the remains of one that managed to get on its feet, only to have its legs smashed in. We shall look at such a place today, the Wasteland Gypsy village, located north of the Jalvert Brothers Waste Disposal. This village contains the remains of many huts, and even 3 that we can enter, that help shed some light on what happened here. The current inhabitants are a group of hostile yet non-feral ghouls that now occupy the town. I say now occupy as I don't believe they were the original settlers. The proximity to the waste disposal might support this argument, as some of them could have been turned into ghouls, but what we find in the huts quickly debunks that theory. The population here doesn't seem to have been too high, maybe only 15 or so. Based on the baby carrier, there may have been at least 1 child, which only makes the place seem more morbid. Many of the huts seem quite rudimentary, although many of them are heavily damaged. One could assume that they were put together better before whatever attack took place here. The fortifications around the town also have many gaps in them, although given the presence of the robots and the ghouls, it could also be assumed that they were blown away in one or more attacks that took place here while there was still a village. I find it odd that it's referred to as a gypsy village, as such a group would not only have had a small presence in the Fallout universe given the time period this is set in, especially since America, as there are only an estimated 1 million today. Therefore, it would be unlikely they would have had a Fallout shelter. Now, there is a building built into the rocks at the far end that you can't get into, so you could say that the ghouls are the gypsies and they were radiated due to an inadequacy of the shelter. But once again, given we will find later, I don't think this is the case. With all the playground equipment lying around and all the large cars, I think this is a park of some description. It is very unlikely that they dragged all this stuff here themselves, given the dangers that would have been involved in doing so. In fact, given its proximity to the nearby campground, cinema and baseball field, I would say it was definitely a playground, possibly part of a larger entertainment complex. This also explains the volume of cars and buses in the area, given how much time has passed. There may have been more equipment originally, but they would have needed to cannibalize it for parts anyway. So let's take a look at one of the first huts and see what these invaders have made of the place, and what we can learn from it. An ugly bugger lurks inside, and we can get a good look at them for the first time. They are simply referred to as Wastelanders have some pretty standard gear. The hut looks lived in, with books and a stealth boy on one table, possibly how these ghouls got into the camp and attacked the group in the first place. The rest of it is quite standard, with some pre-war clothing found in the wardrobe, further suggesting that this may have been a park based on the outfit at hand. The kitchen looks well stocked for a post-apocalyptic hovel, so they have clearly had time to collect and build up somewhat of a stockpile. The second shack looks more developed than the others, and gives us a foreboding look into what may have occurred here. The shack is as normal as it goes: combat shotgun for protection, bed, footlocker, wardrobe, etc. And then this. So just for the pure of sight, that is a person that has killed themselves by dropping a toaster into a bath. Yeah. Now at the moment we do not know why they would do this, only that they have, and that no one bothered to move the skeleton. Now if the ghouls here were part of this village, they would have known this person and would have moved to bury it. Also, there is some evidence that they were invaders, as there's a shotgun here that looks like the person was in the process of loading it, and then just decided to say fuck it instead of defending themselves. Now why they would do this becomes evident a bit later. Behind the bath we find an empty whiskey bottle, which most likely served as both their last drink and as a bit of liquid courage to give them the strength to do what they needed to do, which in this case was killing themselves with a toaster. This last hut wraps it all up in a nice bow. It gives both good context for why that person killed themselves, and the ghouls were the aggressors and invaders here. So here we go. Okay, so I'm gonna let everybody just take this in just a little longer. Yeah. So these are who I assume are the previous residents of the village. Based on the makeshift barricade and the weapons and ammunition scattered near and throughout the hut, I am assuming this was their last stand. They are all retreated in here during the attack and made one last attempt to defend themselves. Now since they're all dead, it obviously did not work. Even more depressing is that there are no skeletons on the other side of the barrier, so we can only assume that they didn't manage to kill a single one of their attackers. The people at the front were the defenders and the people behind were most likely unarmed and then gunned down after. This, to me, is all the evidence I need to come to the conclusion that the ghouls were attacking party here, and gunned down the former residents of this village. This was a gypsy village, a camp made by the possible descendants that survived the bombs. They used parts found in the playground this area was built on to make their village. At some point, a group of hostile ghouls raided it. The individual in the bath seems to have been cut off from the rest of the group and gave up on defending themselves. They had one last drink and then used a toaster to take their own life instead of being murdered by ghouls. The rest of the village fled into the last hut and tried to make a last stand. In doing so, they were all gunned down, their bodies left to rot inside a hut, forgotten and thrown aside by the shits that killed them. Shits that we, many years later, would encounter and put every last fucker in the ground for their sins. I hope you liked this episode about a once prospering gypsy village, and the gruesome tale of the attack that killed them all. If you did, why not leave a like? I love reading comments, so get them in there. Any suggestions for future content or videos you would like me to do are appreciated and welcome. If you want to help me grow, share this video on as many social media sites as you can, especially Reddit. Tell everybody. If you want to contact me regarding business, send me a private message either here or on Twitter and I will get back to you as soon as possible. I hope to see you in my next episode, and until then, goodbye.